Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shifting Gears. I am your host, Clutch. Tonight's going to be a good night. I am joined by my buddy, Wigan. And Julia.
Hi.
So tonight we have some interesting topics. We did experience whatever that was, which was some sort of phone, Wigan.
Well, not me this time. Not
Okay.
much.
All
He's
right.
lying.
Ah, okay.
I mean, wait, I can't blame the guest. It's definitely mine. Sorry about that.
So we had DreamHack happen this weekend. We also had what I'm going to classify as the minor leagues happen this weekend. The GESL, the New England StarCraft 2 League, and we're also going to talk about kind of the open bracket and players that are not as well known trying to break into the scene, trying to get their name out there, be it performance-wise or through some other way. But first off, Julia, since you are a first-time guest, would you please give us a brief personal bio about yourself as a person and also as a player?
Okay, well, my name is Julia, and I recently turned 24 years old. I live in BC on the west coast of Canada. I have played Brood War since I was like 13, so about 10 years now, and naturally progressed into StarCraft 2, so I've played that since it came out in 2010. I played Protoss. I'm still in Diamond, and I am known as the first girl who played on the main stage at MLG Providence.
Against Losira, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody went, who is that girl? kind of thing. Which was cool though, because any kind of player that is not as known as the top pros is a great storyline in any kind of situation. So right now, how would you classify your current position in the eSports scene? Are you a full-time player? Do you play part-time? What's your practice regimen like?
Well, I'm on the team Check 6, and I recently took the last semester off of school from January to April to try and focus on esports full time, and I had some personal things going on in my life that kind of stopped me from playing quite as often as I had hoped to. So I've kind of taken more of a part-time role now. I'm registered back into school. And I might have to get another job or a part-time job soon too. I was streaming full-time, but because of the school that I'm taking, it's 1 day a week, but it's fairly heavy course load. So I really have been lacking on streaming, and I miss it. And then I practice with the team once in a while. Mostly I practice with some friends, and most of them are people that I know in person, actually, in Vancouver. And we often go out for all-you-can-eat sushi and discuss StarCraft all night. It's pretty awesome.
I'm sure I met most of these people at the last event.
Yeah, you did.
So you had a really cool group. Canadians, I don't think I've met one Canadian I've regretted meeting, honestly. And you kind of meet a lot in the esports scene. It's pretty big. As far as involvement, which is cool. So when it comes to Check 6, what's your history with them? How did you get involved with them? And how are they involved with your practice and tournament attendance?
Well, I first started streaming full-time in last September. And a couple times I was on like Destiny stream, and I played with Pin User and In Control a couple times, and so I started to get kind of known. And then when I started thinking about the reality of going to Providence and actually being able to get there, just at the same time everything kind of came together, where a couple teams were kind of talking to me, like whether they were thinking of me as a player or as like an interview host type person for the teams, etc. And Check 6 was one of the teams that actually approached me, but I had a couple friends on that team already, and I guess I kind of liked their offer best, and then with the friends there as well, it just made sense for me to go with them in the beginning, and then it ended up being really beneficial for all of us because I wasn't sure, even if I went, whether or not I would compete. And then when I got there, they said they had a competitor's pass for me and this nice Check 6 t-shirt. And then my second game, or my second opponent, is Lucia on the main stage. So
Wow. Oh my goodness.
yeah,
So that was your first major tournament?
yeah,
Whoa.
yeah.
Goodness.
So that was scary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's intimidating.
And all I could do was just wish that I had practiced a little bit harder because, that would have made the difference between myself and Lucia. But I was pretty happy with how that went. I mean, it was scary at the time, but looking back, it's just been, I was so lucky to have that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's to think how many players get main stage time at their first major tournament. I can't think of very many. Monster recently, but it was his first MLG, but he was doing very well from MVP. So
Yeah.
it's possible, and that's actually one of the topics we're going to talk about tonight. Is really how the open brackets, the qualifiers, work in terms of player exposure and how that feeds into the main stage or the mainstream of these different tournaments. So you have attended a couple Major League Gaming events so far. Have you attended any other tournaments besides MLG?
Only local things. Yeah, not. I don't know if you've heard of Godicon.
I haven't.
But they had a lot of more like board games there, and like the Magic card games. There was like a tournament area for that. Then they had some FPS going on there as well. StarCraft was really a smaller area of it, but that happened on Vancouver Island from here.
Cool.
So that was kind of the next biggest thing that I've gone to, other than Providence, Columbus, and then Anaheim for MLGs. Those are the three, best known things I've been to.
It's quite the jump from there.
Yeah.
It is. What is your overall sense of how the open bracket works at Major League Gaming? I mean, it's really intense. There's not a lot of stories that are exposed because a lot of the coverage feeds into the main players, the main stage. What's a typical day for you? What's Friday like for you? What's Saturday like for you at a MLG?
Usually my friends and I will sleep in on Friday, and we get there maybe with an hour or two to spare. Hopefully practice a little bit. A lot of the times going into my first game, so I prefer not to practice first, because if I ladder one or two games and I lose them, I know I'll be in a bad mindset, and I really don't like to go against my first opponent knowing that I'm already on a losing streak. Every other MLG that I've been to, other than Anaheim, which had like an incredibly difficult open bracket this time, I've always won against my first opponent, and then at Providence, obviously, I fell down into loser's bracket after my second opponent, which was Lucia. But I've almost always eliminated at least 3 people, and usually they're mid to high masters. I just seem to play well in that type of setting. But this time I didn't actually beat anybody in the open bracket, or winners or losers. It's kind of upsetting. Oh. But we get there, we play our games. I hang around with my team and my friends who are there. I'll go watch some people who I'm interested in seeing their games. Surprisingly, I actually don't spend that much time watching the main stage games that are going on. Mm-hmm. I'm more interested in the people really in players' pit, just because they're people that you know about from hometowns, or local heroes. Whereas the people up on the main stage, it's the people that you hear about every time, and yeah, they're going to be awesome games, but it is always the same people, which I think kind of leads into what you're hoping to say soon.
No, it's funny that you say that, because watching DreamHack and other tournaments, the caster's like, oh, these games are going to be so amazing. Oh, it's going to be so good. Oh, this player's so amazing. Yeah, we know that, guys. We know. Why are they amazing, though? Their Zerg player, they did this kind of mechanic, or this ZVZ with Violet versus Symbol. It'll be a little bit more specific in some of the reasons why they're so amazing. can help. But it helps the casters to kind of hype up the match, right?
Yeah,
But
for sure.
when you keep saying amazing or cool or impressive all the time, those words dwindle less in their meaning. And when you move into these breakout players or these performances that happen in the player pit, like, yo, this guy won using like strictly Ravens. Nobody's ever seen that before. Something like that. It piques a lot of interest of, what? This isn't normally what happens in StarCraft 2 matches. What's going on?
Yeah, who is that guy? Yeah.
So I agree with you that there's more dynamic stories sometimes that happen in the player pit, but these players aren't at that kind of Code S level, that MLG champion level. But it still doesn't mean the stories aren't intriguing. And
yeah, well, and I just think that if MLG was cool enough to give me a spotlight up there, and whether it just was based on Lucera and whoever his opponent was, I'm sure me being female came into that in some way, but I'm probably like the worst player in skill level that has ever been up on that stage, and there are so many people who are taking out really good players in the open bracket that deserve a chance up there too, especially if they're on smaller teams that don't maybe have as much sponsorship as some of the big teams, like helping all of this was going to help esports, right? Getting the lesser known players up there, their sponsors' names up there, just everybody who wants to support esports and help it grow, getting your name up there, and at the same time helping the players and giving them a spotlight when they may have not had it before, just because they're not in Code A or Code S, or like the top GM players. Everything would really come together well.
I think it would be cool if there was a couch like in the corner of the player pit, and they can call like the clutch corner or something. And when there's a lot of things going on as far as game-wise on the main stage, I could sit there and talk to different players and their experiences in the open bracket, and they can say, hey, this is what happened in this match, or they can tell me where they're from or what their practice regimen is like. That could be really good content for a lot of eyes to see what's going on with the players. I had the opportunity in the 2011 season to interview different players that were doing really well in the player pit. Gosu User was one of them. But because of budgets and cameras and stuff, it's just strictly like main stage right now. And I got to go into the crowd to give an update. But DreamHack had the Too Good couch, which was completely separate from the main stage. And Too Good would interview all sorts of people, and just really, Too Good style, very nonchalantly, very casually. And there's over 2,000 people that were watching that continuously. So yeah. I feel that there is definitely a void that can be filled. And it doesn't have to be me. It can be somebody else.
I was going to say, I like the clutch corner. I think you've been thinking about this, but that's such a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, or chill time with Wigan or something, that people can sit down and be interviewed on camera. And it didn't have to be live either. It didn't have to be a stream. It could just be B-roll camera footage.
Yeah,
and they
but just being there as it happens.
Exactly.
Right? Like, that's such a good idea.
And they could throw that up on the main stage when there's, 40 minutes of time we have to fill because somebody just got 2-0'd real fast. So there's a lot of different ideas that I've thrown around at different people, behind the scenes of trying to make it work. And a lot of it just comes down to budgets. But I think that's something we could do.
I keep cutting you off, but I was going to say stream, and I don't know how many people are watching because I don't have it open on my second monitor because I know that I would get sidetracked in my answers because I'd be reading you guys the whole time. But we should start a hashtag, Clutch Corner, at MLG.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite idea. I'm so glad you said that. Maybe you've said that before, but that's really genius.
Clutch's Corner, yeah. And then I can, we'd shift gears and talk about different things. So it'd be good. That's right. There's a theme. Okay, so as far as the logistics of the actual physical space, there's some ideas that we can improve it. But Wigan, I had you research and look at other tournaments and how they kind of handle open brackets or open qualifiers. IPL's open qualifiers, DreamHack, this recent one, I think they had open qualifiers. But how do they match up compared to the open bracket that MLG does?
A lot of tournaments, especially some of the smaller ones, will use online qualifiers and things like that, or they'll be invite only. I think IPL 4 had a decently sized open bracket, and I'm not sure about DreamHack, to be honest. But from what I could tell, MLG runs one of the largest actual just anybody can hop in open bracket, and it's part of the reason we have a lot of the problems we do with the player pit is because you have so many players, such little space trying to run as fast as you can, you know. So most of the other tournaments don't really have to deal with the same kind of problems we do in the player pit.
Because it seems it's more controlled over a longer process.
You know, if you have like say online qualifiers, you're just naturally going to have less players at the event because you've cut the field down to 128 at the largest, maybe like 64 or 32, which is pretty common. Or you know, if it's invite only, you have pretty big name tournaments that are as small as 8 players, for example. So it's just not the same environment really, you know. And even with DreamHack, which would have like a very large field, they have I think a much bigger venue. Like if you just look at
they have multiple.
It's a whole
theater
festival.
Rooms,
MLG,
yeah.
which is just
They've got the stadium seating.
yeah. So it's hard to compare different events like that because every event's gonna have very different problems. Like the GESL, for example, having a lot of technical issues, for example, that because they're running it at a school with the internet there.
Yeah.
That don't really apply to say like an MLG or any of the problems that we have at these lands applying to like GSL doesn't really work because they're running in a studio, you know, day after day. Sorry, speaking of phones. So it's kind of difficult to look at other tournaments and see how they deal with issues like this because a lot of times they just don't even have to deal with them.
For the online open qualifiers, sometimes it's players' schedules, or they arrange a match, the player's unable to show up, or time zones. So I can see difficulty with that. But what are some unique problems as far as having all these players at the open player pit, or what are some advantages?
Well, a lot of the advantages are like Julia was saying. There's a lot of really interesting stories, and you get to see see specific players that you wouldn't get to see, and like on the main stage or something like that. You know, you get to see like a Suppy, for example, who wouldn't really get a chance otherwise come through the open bracket, or just like your friends. Like when we went to the first one, you know, you got to watch me play.
Yeah.
Or I get to watch.
I got to sit behind
Sasquatch or somebody like that play. You know, people that I know.
You and I sat right behind Kiwi Kaki, and I forgot who he was playing against for the finals, man. You could see us on camera at the first MLG StarCraft 2 event. We're sitting right behind him. That was cool.
So you get that opportunity, but everybody wants that opportunity, and we had for us a small amount of players, 144, because we had the WCS at the same time. Mm-hmm. But normally it's like 250 players that all want to watch people that are packed in tight at 32 stations. And that's when the problems happen, right? You just can't you literally physically couldn't fit all those people in that space. So you have to have rules about, who can stay, who can't, and everybody hates any rule that goes against them or whatever. And it's just kind of an ugly situation sometimes.
Yeah, we did see a little bit of repercussions of that. Some people posting in Reddit with people physically being there, players being there, trying to watch what was going on, and not being able to see or support their teammates and whatnot. So there are some difficulties with that. But having everybody in one space, in one place, allows journalism to be easier and to have that physical presence of these players. And it's good for these players as well, marketing-wise, networking-wise, to talk to different people in the space, to meet fans, and to go and support your favorite, local players. I wonder how it's going to evolve more and more, especially with the WCS, and we'll talk about that later on. But non-seeded players and how it works in the open bracket, I feel there could be something that MLG could do for more exposure. And I don't know what the exact solution could be, like ranking-wise or tournament-wise. There could be like a separate group, or something. But anybody can still win these tournaments. Leenock at the MLG Championships, the 2011 championship, fought through the open bracket and won, which was an incredible story. Mm-hmm. So it's still anybody's game. But Julia, I don't know. With your experience, do you feel that anybody that goes into the open brackets at an automatic disadvantage, or the disadvantage is too much of a gap compared to seeded players?
Absolutely. I mean, even if you've got the best players through, didn't Stefano play Polt like in like one of the first rounds? I think. You know.
And pool play, yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I guess so. Okay, but it's just like earlier on, it doesn't anybody, especially at Anaheim, the open bracket was so stacked. Like you've got really good players taking out really good players, and even if you drop down to losers bracket, half of all the players that are in the open bracket also drop down to the losers bracket.
Yeah.
So you could still be playing, your arch nemesis from rank 1 and 2 GM ladder, and get taken out by some cheesy build right away. Just because you're great doesn't mean you can't always lose to something once. So you're definitely at a disadvantage, I think, having to play against all those different people to work all your way up.
Maybe there could be some sort of... Go ahead, Wigan.
I was
Sorry.
just say, yeah, there's definitely an advantage to being seeded into pool play.
Well, there should be, because that's like how that whole system works with the arenas and rewarding the people that place in top 8 or top 16.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's just kind of a nature of the way tournaments are run and leagues are run these days. It's just, it's an advantage, but it's an advantage that's earned, fortunately. So I don't know if there's much you can do about it. I mean, it's nice we have double elimination, so there is sort of cushion.
That's definitely helpful for sure.
Yeah, so there's that cushion in the open bracket. But I don't know. It's hard, like playing through the open bracket. It sure is. It's difficult on players.
It's the gauntlet.
Yeah, but that's because there's just so many good players now, man. There's not a lot you can do about it. There's just you really have to fight to get through that open bracket and fight to win the tournament. Unfortunately, we've seen it's possible. We have guys come from the open bracket all the time to actually win MLGs. So at least we're still, it's not to the point where you have to be seeded to win or anything like that. Fortunately.
Now, Julia, with your experience in the open bracket so far, and you can be as general or specific as you want to, do you feel that it's a good time investment continually going to them, even if you don't place very high? Is it good exposure for you? Or is it just like, I'm going to go and I'll probably beat the first couple people, but once I go higher, it's going to be really, really tough. Is it worth my time? I mean, what are your overall thoughts of just your experiences so far?
I absolutely think it's worth going, even if, for people around my level or even a little bit higher, your chances of winning or placing or really getting any exposure is low, but you're not going to get any if you don't go at all and try. You never know what's going to happen. You might take out somebody and that you never would have expected to. Like the last couple MLGs, like I said, when I've gone, the people that I've beaten usually aren't people that are known necessarily, but the people that I lose to are very well known. Like I lost to Lacira, then I lost to Destiny. At Columbus, I lost to Evereyes. This one I lost to Vibe. So it's just, it's cool that way too, because I meet new people that I didn't know before. Like I had never met Destiny in person, and then when I got to play him in the losers bracket and I got taken out by him, like I was pretty sure I wasn't going to take a game off him, but I still had fun with the games, and I shook his hand and smiled afterwards. I was happy about it. And especially for people who, just for the experience and going, you may not think that you're going to go over very far, but even people who are silver or gold, I know they compete and it's fun. It's just awesome to be able to have the opportunity, I guess, to play against people whose streams you watch and to go to MLGs and just meet everybody. It's totally worth it, I think. $70 is not too steep.
Yeah, it's a really good time. Like the whole electric feel of what happens there. When I was on the stage and I told everybody, hey guys, I hosted at E3 and hosting at Anaheim, this is way better than E3. I was telling the truth. It really is. There is this overall feeling, this excitement that I feel more energized and more excited about than going to traditional sports games. Because I feel so invested in the scene and I want it to grow and be successful, and almost everybody there does as well. And you get go ahead.
I think something really cool about that too is like when you go to a sports game, like my NFL team is the Patriots. So if I was going to a Patriots team game, you know, like, yeah, you can get into it and you have fun watching and you cheer on the players, but you're not one of the players.
Yeah.
Where at MLG you can be, you know, like you pay the price and you get to compete just the same as everyone else does. Like it's so much more accessible.
Yeah, accessible. That's a good word for it. Sometimes those sporting events feel a little too bloated in terms of everything that's going on and a lot of things happening outside of the actual game. But it feels like esports and the people around there is more family now, and seeing the same people over and over again and watching these dramatic stories unfold is such a pleasure to be a part of. But let's move into your life before your main stage appearance against Losira and then after. What changed for you as a player after that main stage exposure?
That word specifically, exposure. I definitely had. That's probably me echoing. I can put my headset in. My numbers jumped like crazy for sure on my stream. I'm still known, you know, as the girl who played Lucira on the main stage, and I still can't believe it myself, honestly. Anytime I see like interviews from that day or that weekend on YouTube, or people bring it up, or even I like see friends from high school from years ago and they're like, oh my god, I can't believe I know you. It's surreal, you know. And it's been actually really awesome too, because I've had a lot of people sorry, let me fix this echo first before I try to. I think it's probably me. Sorry, stream.
It's okay.
But I've had so many like people message me and say, you know, my girlfriend got promoted. She was, you know, inspired by your play, or like going up there, and you know, you were really brave and whatever. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Yeah. Is it still echoing?
I still hear an echo.
Let me see.
It's
Okay,
okay.
I still hear
sorry.
it.
Maybe it's wigging.
Sorry, everybody.
It's all right. But keep going. You were talking about how people's would have messaged you talking about how their girlfriend got promoted.
Yeah, and it's just awesome. Like I've had so many supportive people, you know, messaging me, because like I definitely get a lot of people who think that I don't, you know, necessarily deserve the attention that I got from that weekend. And you know, everyone can have their own opinion, but just on the same note, you know, I've just had so many people just telling me how cool it was, and you know, what a step for women in gaming it was, and how I inspired them to do better. And I'm just so glad that I could, you know, that at least a female got to have that experience. You know, it didn't have to be me, but yay that it was. Did that answer everything?
Yeah. What was your initial reaction when Blizzard contacted you to do an interview?
Well, actually, that wasn't that Blizzard interview, which was crazy. Like, I didn't even, somebody on Twitter tweeted a screenshot of that on Battle.net to me before I even realized it was there. That was actually an interview I did with a writer from Team Dignitas.
Okay.
And I guess Blizzard kind of showcased it. So I never actually had like an actual interview with Blizzard that they talked to me about, but it was really cool that it was online there. And I just remember that day when it first went live, I think every minute for the whole day, my phone vibrated because I had a new follower on Twitter. It was crazy.
I know that feeling after like every MLG event. It gets nuts. Wow.
That's
I'm
awesome.
glad I got to see it. And this is beyond just you being a female gamer. This is more important as far as just anybody trying to break into the scene. But yeah, it's really cool that there's a place where, you know, females and males can be considered equal in terms of the gaming sphere. But just for any player to break into the scene is very, very difficult. And I want to shift gears here and talk about Suppy's performance. Now, he's your teammate from Check 6. He won the Big Flex 4 Breakout Player Award. And hopefully more eyes will be present on the open bracket of lesser known players because of this, because of how he did, because of his blog he posted about his experience with MLG.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Are you able to practice a lot with Suppy? Do you know him as a player, a person?
I haven't played a lot with Seppi, but he's offered before. But I think our schedules just conflict a little bit. But he is just such a good person. He's got such a good attitude about everything, and he just always wants everybody to just do their best and just really improve everything and just get everything as best as it can be. And I'm just so happy that worked for him, because he's just like always encouraging and motivating the whole team. Like, we're all in this Skype chat, and I just love his attitude, and just I couldn't have hoped for that to happen to anyone else.
Yeah, I was very glad too that Check Six actually tweeted a portion of last week's episode when we talked about his performance. We had Omerta, aka Galen Andrus, who's a fantastic writer, and then Wigan and myself were talking about the event, giving a recap. And we're very happy with his performance. We're happy how the community reacted to his performance. But these happen almost every tournament. And having that community support really with Twitter and those followers on Team Liquid that are fans of you or fans of a player helps that person get to those moments where they can really stand out and do their best. But how does it grow from that? How do you as a player, Julia, continue to grow your fan base? I was looking for this list actually of Suppy. I just wanted to mention he took out In Control, Tails, DDE. He lost to Suppy, and then he beat Sasquatch, Killer, and Bling, and then Select, and then he was taken out by Thorzane. Like, whoa. Yeah, it's insane. I'm just so proud of him. So I'm sorry, I missed the first half of your question. I feel like an idiot. No, it's okay. Thank you for grabbing that list, by the way.
No problem.
The question was, how do you as a player continue to grow your fan base?
Well, I think every player has a certain, kind of niche that they find themselves in, and streamer, I should say, not just player. Because a lot of people, I think people watch streams for a few different reasons, and some people you'll watch because their skills are amazing, and it's just really amazing to watch from their perspective play their games. Other people you watch because they're entertaining, and they may be higher level players, and they may be, just interesting or funny people. Like Hats of Destiny, for instance, like they're definitely entertaining to watch, but like their skill level is very high too. But you don't necessarily expect them to win, the next MLG. Mm-hmm. For myself, I kind of see myself more as an entertainer. Surprise. I know a lot of my viewership are lower skilled players. So one thing that I think is helpful for me to continue to grow my fan base, and it's just not marketing myself as like the best player out there, but trying to be helpful and provide something that people can learn that's closer to their level. Because somebody who's in silver may love watching Stefano, but they can't exactly copy his builds, right? Whereas somebody who may watch Huck might watch me instead, just because my builds and what I do and the way I think of the game is going to be a lot closer to the way they think about it, and a lot more doable for them. At the same time, when I stream, I talk to my chat way more than I should, and that's just how I am, right? Like, if it's not just because I'm a girl that I like to talk, but I just think that if these people are going to spend their time watching me and supporting me and trying to meet me at MLGs, I give back, I think, which I think is true for all streamers. It should be all players. It sucks when people get above their fans and their support and don't necessarily go out of their way to be overly friendly, and maybe I just don't know that yet because I haven't been doing it forever, but I think it's really important to appreciate the people that support you and interact with them. And I think that's how I continue to grow my fan base, is just really taking the time to talk to all the people who watch me and support me, and continuing to try to develop my skills. Hopefully in the future, I'm going to try to expand my skills a little bit more too, not just in terms of gaming, but hopefully other things in the esports industry. I'm not too sure where I might be able to go with that, but maybe hosting or interviews, or maybe even casting games at some point. Just like being kind of everywhere, I think is how you continue to expand and maintain your following.
Yeah, to build yourself as a player, as a product, as an image, is important. And we see a lot of players do that. And streaming has been really helpful. I mean, some players are able to completely pay for their rent, whatever they need to do, to survive, to play full time, and that's great. I wish I had numbers watching me when I play. I try to be entertaining. I'm trying to get these different artists so I can play their music, because I take the royalty and DRM music kind of seriously, because I can get into some sort of issues later on. But that's besides the point. You have to continue to grow yourself, and if you're consistent, your fan base grows, and being consistent attending different tournaments really helps. I'm excited to see you and a lot of other players that are usually in the open bracket, and try to make my rounds and talk to them when I have a chance, because we're all in this together, and the players are the most important part when it comes to esports, not just the ones winning all the tournaments, but the ones fighting, the underdogs, which to me are really compelling stories, and that's my job at these tournaments, to tell those stories.
Clutch corner.
Yeah. Wigan, you have more exposure to these players than I do. Have you seen an evolution, or your relationships have grown with these different players? Seeing people that aren't on the main stage all the time, but you get to talk to them, see how their lives are going, stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, we get a fairly limited amount of time, because as players have complained about occasionally, is we do try to push people to get into the game and keep going, and I'm sure Julia knows exactly how that goes. But it is really nice to see a lot of familiar faces and really get to know people. And there's so many actual, just genuinely nice people that are that really just love what they're doing in the StarCraft scene among the players that are coming up. And I think that's honestly one of the more important parts of the StarCraft scene, because the Marine Kings and everybody that everyone loves, they're popular now, and they'll be popular. But if you want StarCraft 2 to stay big and grow like Brood War, for example, these open bracket players, these up and coming players, are the ones that are really going to make it happen. They're the ones that are going to be the stars in the future. So, like, getting to know those people and hearing their stories, I think that's something that we as in you and I, not just MLG in general, can do a much better job of, like, getting those stories out there, getting exposed. Like you said, like a clutch corner kind of thing, because, like, to be honest, a lot of these guys ought to have their story told, man. There's random ladder warriors out there, like random NAGM players that are taking out some pretty big names and playing some really great games. So the more exposure and the more you can learn about these guys, the better. And the one thing part of the reason I sort of fell in love with StarCraft and the StarCraft community is all those people, they just love what they're doing. They want to be there, and they want to play games, and they want to win regardless of what league they're in or anything like that. So the more you can get to know those guys, and if you go to an event and you're a fan or whatever, just talk to the people that are playing there, man. Everyone has an interesting story. Everybody does.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Everybody has a story. That's one thing you learn in acting, man. Every human, has a story. We're all unique. So besides going in depth in that, a little bit deep there, let's move into press and press coverage. Esports journalism is growing. Video game journalism is in a weird spot right now, because a lot of them are in bed with the game developers, so they can't be as...
Can we even say that esports journalism is growing? Because I feel like esports journalism hasn't really existed yet. It's just now becoming born in general, like in ESFI or something. Like the idea of an independent esports journalist. I think Artosis talked about it actually a long time ago on the State of the Game. It's just something that's never existed, especially in the StarCraft scene, really effectively, because people how do you get that big story, right? When everyone knows each other and everyone's friends, and like look at State of the Game. Those guys have all been friends for so long. Like how's one of them going to tell like a story, or how's information going to get out, or anything like that happens in real journalism going to happen in the esports world, you know?
Well, and that comes down to money sometimes, budgets, people that can do it full time. ESFI, which is an independent journalism source, they send their people to the different events, but the financial backing is still growing there. So, in terms of growth, there's more than there was 2 years ago. It still has a ways to go, and I've appreciated different interviews at different media outlets that are not, mainstream media like ESPN, but smaller websites or podcasts are trying to do to expose more esports and talk to different people. I've appreciated the different content they're making, but I feel there's more that can be done. And when it comes to getting the biggest story, everybody wants to interview the winner, right? And everybody's going to be in line to interview the winner. But during the event, there's so many opportunities for these different journalism sites to interview a lot of lesser-known players and talk about their experiences, or set up a little corner and, be near the entrance and find 4 players a day, just 4 players, and schedule with them ahead of time before the tournament starts to say, hey, when you have a chance, either at the end of your run or between games, or we have an hour break, we'd love to interview you about your experiences so far. Talk about your games, who are you up against. And that can create some great content for their websites, get exposure to those players and their sponsors, and everybody wins. It may not draw a lot of numbers compared to, interview with Marine King Prime or Dong Ray Gu, but the community will appreciate it when the content is good and they're not like awkward interviews and they don't ask always the same questions, but it allows the player to get more in depth about themselves, their game, the tournament so far, the open bracket, and see a lot of the stories that people don't see. So I feel there is a void there as well, that there could be a lot more journalism covering what's going on here.
And even more than just like interviews and things like that. Like, I mean, actual news. Like, say there's a scandal. Say, for example, what was the tournament that was run that the guy like ran off with the prize money or whatever? I can't remember the name of it.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about,
in the
right?
Philippines?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Like right now, when there's some sort of scandal or drama or something like that, or there's something like odd that happens, or someone has a complaint, right? It pops up on Team Liquid or Reddit, and you have a bunch of random people weighing in, and nobody has any idea what's actually going on.
Yeah.
There's no real credible reporting source. How nice would it be if you could go to like an ESFI, and that's where the story would happen, and the information would be presented and things like that, like would happen on ESPN, for example. That's another side of esports journalism that I think is something that we're moving towards, but that we could definitely use.
What about GameSpot?
I mean, I don't want to be unfair to GameSpot. I don't think I've ever gone to their website for news.
Okay, I have. I like their reviews more than other websites out there. But again, that's the thing too. Like, if there's this mutual benefit of praising games and developers, and the developers will do interviews with you, and that's how you get the content and the numbers. So it's tough trying to build something that's purely independent. But I think it can completely happen. There just has to be
It'll get there. It's something
consistency.
that'll inevitably happen.
Yeah.
It'll get there eventually, as long as the scene remains popular.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, that would, with what happened with the players being kicked out and something, that could have been something that was covered by somebody that was there, live news. What's going on? Give us your feelings. Like, yeah, I just got kicked out, man, and the Koreans get to be there and practice. I mean, that would be something that people would want to watch to find out what's going on, and to get more sound bites from people that are there compared to he said, she said on Reddit, and people are chiming in like, I can't believe this happened. It's totally unprofessional. It's like, dude, you live in the basement of your parents' house. Like, you were not there. You have no valid opinion. Not that there's anything wrong with living with your parents unless you're 30, but I digress. There needs to be more legitimacy in that scene and more trusted sources and for that. But hey, I enjoy what ESFI does. I enjoy what GameSpot does. It's still growing. You're right. We're getting there. So,
I've been honestly really impressed with ESFI. They're really getting there, and they do some really great work. So if anyone out there hasn't checked out their stuff, definitely check it out, ESFI.
That's right. Juliet, you have been approached, I'm sure, by a lot of different podcasters, websites to talk about you as a female gamer. Does that ever get old, or you like past the point of, listen, guys, yeah, I'm a female, but I'm a gamer first. Like, I'm here to compete. Or is it just good coverage in all?
I'm never offended when people ask me about that because I know it's relevant. Like if there was only one male in a female, populated industry, I'm sure he would get the same things. And I've never really thought about that before as something that I should be like, oh my god, I've heard this 100 times. Although I do get many of the same questions often, but they're just easy answers at this point, so they don't bother me either. But I was going to say, though, I was interviewed by ESFI at Providence, too, and it was really awesome. They were really professional, and I loved all your guys' points about all that. It's really true. Like, you'll have world events happening, and there are reporters from how many different news stations there right away. And, maybe esports isn't as big as the world, but it should be. There's definitely room for improvement with that, and I think that'd be very interesting, yeah.
We'll see where that goes, though. But I'm grateful for people that agree to do interviews with them because that helps their interview experience and their news experience, and everybody grows from it. I'm grateful that it's being built from the ground up, too. These are people that are passionate about esports and telling those stories. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the minor leagues that are happening right now in esports. So don't go anywhere, guys. Just a quick commercial. We come back. More shifting gears. Stay tuned. All right, guys, welcome back to Shifting Gears. You've been listening to some amazing music by Ronald Jenkins.
Woo.
He's a cool guy, gave me permission to use his music. So we're back, and right now we're going to move into the minor leagues. And how I define minor leagues is it's not the major leagues, obviously, but they're tournaments that are run more locally, but they're still streamed. They try to get some of the the pro players with them as well, or they have more local players. And first off, I want to talk about the GESL. This was happening the same time as DreamHack, so it was a little bit tough to watch sometimes. But I felt it was a success. Cybersports Network was there, Beyond Gaming was there, and it was a good time. They had Jorosar and Gwyn and who else casted? Axel Toss, was he there? No, Thunder Toss was, and Dilla. So it was a good show. There were some good casting opportunities for some of the lesser-known casters that maybe haven't had main stage time at MLGs or other events. And the players were already in town because of Anaheim, so logistically it made sense for them to stay there for another week and participate. And there was a huge list of sponsors. First off, were any of you able to watch that tournament at all?
The GESL?
GESL, yeah.
Yeah, I was able to catch a little bit of it. I got a little bit less interested as most of the Terrans got knocked out.
The Turians? Yeah, the Turians.
The Korean Terrans. Yeah. I got to watch a bit of it. To be honest, I guess we're going to talk about it, right? There was a lot. It was very difficult to watch it the first day.
Yeah.
They had a lot of stream problems and lag
Yeah.
issues, but that's just kind of what goes with running a new event. A lot of people don't understand how difficult it is to actually run a live event, even if it's 8 people in your house or like a real big thing like the GSL was trying to do.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, they also had League of Legends there. Wombat was able to cast some of that. So it was a good event. It was a success. And, well, in terms of what they were trying to accomplish, right? I mean, the stream viewers was around like 2,000. I think it jumped up to maybe like 5,000 or 7,000 at one point. I'm not exactly sure.
I think they had a lot of issues with the actual viewership. And that was kind of surprising because, to be honest, once they got over their technical issues, it was a pretty well run tournament.
Yeah.
And there were great games and everything, but I guess they kind of ran into the problem of running kind of the same time DreamHack was.
Yeah, that's we're going to get into coordination a little bit later, but as far as not viewership, but running a tournament, it looked like it was a success. I mean, the players had a good time. There were good games.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, also what happened was the New England StarCraft 2 League, which was small, local. I knew some people that were running it. I actually got to cast one of the games for the qualifiers about a month ago. They had some production problems. I think they only had like either 1 or 2 cameras that were there. But it was enjoyable to watch because if you were in like the proper mindset of this is small, but everybody there was having a good time, it was cool to see. And it was cool to see people that had attended MLG Anaheim and that were running this event. They had some production problems, some sound issues, but they worked on trying to fix them. And of course, being at the same weekend as DreamHack, it was tough to watch all of it. But this gave more exposure to local players, and Poke Bunny won. And Poke Bunny's a name that some of us have heard. I think he was at PAX, and he's attended some events. So to see him win was cool. And also their awards ceremony was funny because they had all the raffle tickets after the raffle, and they ripped them up, and they used it as confetti, and after he won, they just like threw the confetti at him. It was like more enjoyable to watch that than the MLG awards ceremony where they take a break and they come out and all the casters are out there. So it's funny, they're trying to like figure out what they were going to do for the awards ceremony. Everybody's like, okay, so where's the camera going? But it was a good time, and I got some messages from the different people that were involved, and they thanked me for their retweets and telling people about it. It's a homegrown tournament. It's a local tournament. These are local players. So talking about like the minor leagues is what I'm going to designate, and people may not agree, and I don't know how to properly designate them outside of that. I mean, they are smaller tournaments compared to IPLs, MLGs, or DreamHacks.
Mm-hmm.
But could there be an option or a plan or some sort of thing that these smaller tournaments could feed into a bigger tournament? Be they a seeded bracket in the open bracket, be they some sort of exposure, an interview, a main stage exhibition match, something that could reward these smaller tournaments. Julia, your thoughts on that first?
I mean, it helps if you've got a lot of great players in a certain area. For instance, in Vancouver, we've got a lot of really good players. We've got a huge really community around here, as well as like Seattle, which is just 3 hours south of us. Yes. Whenever we have any tournaments, we've got like most of Team Light come up. We've got a lot of players around here like Star Life and Optic Zero, and a lot of other players who are really good but have fallen a little bit off the map, I guess. I think we're having a Vancouver at the end of June, and I believe they're holding the WCS qualifiers there, at least for maybe BC. I could be totally wrong with that, but that's kind of cool how they're incorporating that, and it's definitely nice to have local tournaments and those types of things where people can go and cheer on their local fan or their local like heroes,
Yeah.
And then when, like, even myself, if I may be so bold, when I go to tournaments, I can meet people who live around, and they're like, oh, I remember when I saw you up on the stage, that was so cool. And then they go and they see me doing interviews at MLG Anaheim, right? Like, it's really cool to be able to meet people on a personal level that way too.
It's cool. Vancouver.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
When it comes to those kind of events, is it less stressful, do you think, or is there the same amount of stress as far as performing as a player?
Well, one thing I've always thought when I played against Lucera is that, as scary as it was to play up on main stage, there was definitely a lot less stress about the game itself, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do too well against him, similar to most of the people in the world. Whereas, like, if I was playing up on main stage against somebody who was closer to my skill level, there would have been a lot more pressure, I think, to perform. So I think maybe that depends kind of too, when you're playing at these tournaments, just who your opponents are, really. Because at an MLG, you've got so many opponents and there's so many people playing at the same time. It might actually be less pressure at a bigger tournament until you get, until you move further into top 32 and pool play and all that. Whereas at home, everybody can watch everybody, and I guess the stakes aren't as high, but I mean, I guess they both have their pros and cons in terms of your question.
Well, I also think it helps preparing for a larger tournament as well.
Yeah,
when you have
for sure.
that scenario of, how bracket works or that kind of pressure, it feeds into a larger tournament. That's the same way as in traditional sports, how like collegiate sports work or the minor leagues, is these people are doing their best to train so they can be drafted into the major leagues or prepare for major league games. And when I want to clarify, when I mean minor leagues, I'm not degrading GESL or the New England StarCraft 2 League. It's not what I'm meaning. I'm meaning a smaller tournament that doesn't have as many players or as much production or exposure, but still the games are incredible to watch, or they have high caliber players, but it's not the same scope. So I just wanted to clarify that. So I'm not trying to be derogatory to any other leagues outside of IPL or MLG or DreamHack. Now, what I've been very impressed lately is the amount of sponsors that have been behind these different tournaments. The list of sponsors for the GESL was huge, and they had a big raffle. They're giving away a lot of prizes. I'm not sure what kind of return on investment these sponsors expect from smaller tournaments, but it impresses me, just being one person, of the amount of exposure their products have at these tournaments that people are watching. And I am more inclined to purchase, for example, Kingston HyperX solid state drive compared to a different drive, because I've heard their name more associated with esports events.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think is the next step? As a player, Julia, sponsorship is important, but is there anything that you would want more out of sponsors or out of sponsors of not just your team, but out of tournaments?
Money. Salaries.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
I mean,
Being able to live off playing StarCraft, right?
what he said.
Yeah. Or a new computer, or transportation to pay for your lodging and stuff at a tournament, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it just depends if the player's getting lots of exposure and using their equipment and everything. Like for Tech 6, we're sponsored by TT eSports, and so I just recently got like a keyboard and a mouse and a headset, and it's awesome, and I get to wear that around now too. But instead of getting like the next keyboard the next time, definitely like money helping to get to events and being able to actually represent and show that I've got all these things too is definitely helpful. And yeah, it's pretty awesome to see bigger brands like that supporting even bar crafts and smaller tournaments or minor leagues, like you said. And I've also wondered about the return on investment myself, but I also agree, I'm just repeating everything you said, that I'm way more likely to buy the products or from specific stores. Like in Vancouver, we had Memory Express, who would sponsor many of our tournaments that we would have, and Memory Express is just like an NCIX or a Newegg. and their store was in Richmond, right beside the LAN center where we would always have like 200 people show up for these tournaments.
Yeah.
And then everyone would go and support Memory Express after, not just because they were close, but because their name was everywhere, and they really got invested in the players and the tournament and the local spirit and community.
Yeah, it really helps a company to show that they are invested in not just not just a one-time thing, but really the element of esports, the element of competitive gaming. And I've been very impressed with the TT Esports and other companies that sponsor bar crafts, and they send those products out that are raffled off for free to the different people there. I think that's great. Seeing maybe higher prize pools for smaller tournaments would be fantastic as well. But that goes into, what is growth, what is marketing, and what is charity that these companies can kind of write off. But I have been impressed by that. Wigan, if TT Esports sponsored Wigan, that'd be cool. But, man, you see a lot of different products that the different player uses. But do you have any thoughts on that before we move on into coordination?
Actually, I have a lot of thoughts, actually.
Okay, good.
Not just on the sponsorship thing, but I guess starting all the way back when you mentioned you were wondering if like local tournaments could eventually work up to a majored one or something like that.
Some sort of seeded program.
I think in general that's something that I don't know. I think a lot of smaller tournaments kind of want to run their own thing. Mm-hmm. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if some of the major tournaments, once they got big, if things kept getting bigger and bigger, started to use them as that, like say, as like an online qualifier or something like that, or an offline qualifier. If you use like New England, results for seeding for like a qualifier for like a big event like an IPL or an MLG or something like that, I could see that happening. But the thing I would like to see most from these smaller tournaments are more investment in the local ones, like the New England StarCraft League. I think if you really want competitive gaming, not just in StarCraft but in general, to grow, you have to embrace a local scene and have that sort of ability for a player to start small, right, and grow up and continue to move before they hit the big time. Like right now, if you want to like suddenly jump onto the scene as a player, it's very difficult, right? You have to either like beat random Korean players in like a Playhem, or be suppy and just show up at an MLG and wreck like people left and right. It's really difficult, right? But if you had a robust local scene, like who said it? Wawa said it in the chat. As much as we kind of like joke around about the fighting game community and how they're very anti-professional, they have a great local scene, right? Like people know like who the best player in, like say Virginia is, right? Like they know that. And that's something that I think StarCraft could really use. Like you need to have a local scene so you can grow players, you can get people interested, you can get people to to sort of just come up and become a professional. It seems like in StarCraft 2, if you weren't already a professional player, you're gonna have a really hard time feeding yourself as a professional player. Like coming from Brood War, like most our pros right now are former Brood War pros. They've been doing it forever and ever since before StarCraft 2 came out, right? And I think that these small tournaments, I'm very interested in seeing where they're going, because that's where you're going to see a lot of actual real growth in the scene for North America, of course. Like Korea is a whole different story. They already have basically a local scene because almost everything is local, and Korea is a much smaller country. And you have your high school like StarCraft team. That's a thing that exists. That's something that I wish would exist in the States. It's very far away.
I would have been on that team hands down.
And then from there you can jump on to a lot of different other things like sponsorship. You could have a sponsor for a local area, right? You could have Kingston HyperX could be sponsoring like a northeastern team. You could have a different sponsor for it just opens up so many more interesting options that I think that's somewhere where the scene has to go if it wants to continue to grow for years and years and years. That's where it needs to go, right? As for individual sponsorship, I'm generally very impressed on how many sponsors people and team managers can get. Um, as but I also know that a lot of people in the business don't really get paid. Like they might be sponsored, they might be on a big team, and I won't say which one specifically, but it's kind of prevalent for all of them. But they're not really getting paid. Like they're not able to afford to basically put a roof over their head and feed themselves playing StarCraft. But they are expected to practice like it's their only job, right? So that's something that's going to need to change eventually, and I think that's like things like team houses and stuff helps alleviate that a lot.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of sponsors for teams and stuff like that, but I don't know how much actual capital and actual involvement they really have. So obviously everyone wants more. That's the easy answer. Everyone more money, more involvement, more things like that. And I hope that that companies out there realize how much exposure, like you guys have mentioned, and how much love for a company like someone will really get because they sponsor their favorite player or because they sponsor their favorite team. Like how many people go and they buy Monsters because they sponsor EG and they love EG or something like that. So I hope that companies really look to that and really embrace the fact that people do appreciate it. And it's hard to realistically say where I want sponsors to go. Like it'd be nice if there's that super utopian perfect world where a sponsor actually will pay salaries for players and things like that. But just I hope they realize how much they're really getting out of sponsoring these teams and these players. That's what I really hope.
I agree with you too. I think starting from the roots and growing with esports is really going to benefit a lot of businesses. You can't look at Monster energy drinks without thinking EG, and you can't look at Dr. Pepper without thinking MLG, right? I just think there's something to be said about starting, at the beginning with a player or an entire community like that too. Everyone's just going to be so much more, what's the word? They're just going to love that team or that brand so much more, right? Devoted. That's what I wanted to say.
That's what we've seen with NASCAR. I really don't follow NASCAR, but I've watched NASCAR, and that scene grew because of sponsorship support. That's why you see the cars completely plastered with different sponsors and the suits, the jerseys that they wear. And there's also the pride factor that moves into this, and sometimes it's more than just money or a return of investment. It's that pride factor, like, hey, this player we sponsored just won a local tournament, man, and we're gonna send him out to the next MLG because why not? We want to reward him, and that looks good PR-wise, human resources-wise for that company, and it gives them that human touch, and that's important as well. And I think some companies realize that, which is good. I mean, local softball teams or local, junior high teams, local companies will help sponsor the field or the team. And it's good to see that because they just do it because they want them to succeed. Now, esports, is not as big or as accepted as baseball, where you can have a local team or a high school team, but it's continually growing. And what's cool about having local LANs or local events is that will feed into bar crafts to watch bigger events, and especially if a player they send is going to that event. And then they show up on Clutch's corner, then they're going to go crazy on the open bracket. So it all loops into something that can continue to grow and really help out the local scene. And I want to talk about the World Championship Series here for a sec. I had a conversation with Rob Simpson that was very cool, and it's about Poland. And this is an example of what the World Championship Series is doing. And I think Blizzard has created something that is really awesome. And the reason is, in Poland, when they had the tournament there, 15,000 people showed up to watch. They weren't the best games in comparison to what happens at the GSL, but these people went nuts for their players. And now these 15,000 people are going to tell everybody what they saw, and they're going to go to whatever kind of events, barcrafts, to support the players moving into the global or the European finals and then the global finals. So that, to me, what Blizzard has done has helped to spark that local scene, the local heroes, building into the World Championship, and for everybody to cheer for their local heroes. The North American scene, with Daisuke and Vibe. It was great to see that. And having that is going to continue to grow esports from the ground up. And that's very exciting to see. The North American finals are happening in Raleigh. And we're going to shift gears now and talk about coordination. And this is important right now. Major tournaments are still trying to figure this out, but they're doing better. And this is what happened this last weekend. We had all these tournaments going on while DreamHack was happening. So with this overlap, it's tough to watch these smaller tournaments. It's tough to attend these smaller tournaments if you live locally. So is it... I don't know if they need to look at scheduling, if it's just too saturated. The GESL made sense because the players were already there in the Anaheim area. Julia, asking you, have you ever had to pick or choose any events as of now, or are they pretty good as far as the Vancouver area planning around major events?
I mean, in terms of the Vancouver area, we don't have tournaments, every second weekend that I have to choose between. So for me, I would say that's not really an issue. Something that I was noticing the other day, though, and I actually saved this because I knew this was something we were going to talk about, but it was something that Huck tweeted. He said, at the airport, leaving soon for DreamHack, after back to Cali for 3 days, then Korea, then after NASL in Toronto and WCS. And I just, for those people, it's crazy that that's a reality for him every month, right? You would think that the rest of the year, could be spread out a little bit, but maybe it's not. Maybe there are so many tournaments that are happening, and even E3 was right the weekend before all of this, and maybe you're not competing, and it's not even just the players that are suffering, but listening to his schedule, how much time is he spending in the air? That's terrible. And living out of a suitcase, I could never do. But also for the fans who want to watch and have to choose between the events that they want to see, and even the casters and people who are going, it's you tend to see, maybe the top 8 or 10 casters, the same people all the time getting reused and recycled, and they're great, but their voices too, everything is just crazy.
Well, it was good not having a DreamHack and an MLG on the same weekend.
Definitely.
But feeding into, one weekend to the next, it was a pretty busy week. Like I said, I came home, decompressed for a bit, and then I was full on watching mode all weekend, even into Monday. I think it's getting better, and as more of these leagues communicate and tell us in advance when they're happening, it's easier for these smaller tournaments to plan around that. And I think what GESL did to plan a tournament the weekend after MLG so these players could stick around and participate in that was a really smart idea and was very beneficial. Now, there was more European players at DreamHack than in MLG, which completely makes sense because DreamHack's in Europe. And so there's some players that would decide not to even attend MLG because they want to focus on DreamHack. And that can make sense as well. The more, local time you can train, prepare, and whatnot. So that just comes down to communication and coordination. And, I wish there was the one website calendar. It could be Team Liquid. Where you can be hey, I want to plan a LAN in the Seattle area, but I want to make sure it doesn't conflict with any other tournaments going on. And you find this one weekend where nothing else is going on for StarCraft 2, and then you're good to go. But I feel that is something that leagues are still working on and need to get better at. But with more communication and planning out there, it is getting better. Now, moving on into our last couple agendas that we have, or questions that we have on our notes, we're going to move into the questions we received from chat. And this, I'm going to ask Wigan first, since he has encountered so many different players being an admin since almost day one of MLG having StarCraft 2 on their pro circuit. Do you think the player base is dwindling or will dwindle, or is it going to increase with the Heart of the Swarm expansion?
Do you mean as far as people that are interested in it professionally, or just in general, everybody, include whoever logs into Battle.net kind of thing?
Professionally, in terms of people becoming disheartened because they can't place and they've attended 15 events and they're not going to go anymore.
I don't know. That's a really good question.
Like, there's no reward for continuing to go because they can't break into the top scene.
I-
You know,
I don't I don't think so. Like right now, I can't remember an event where MLG didn't like sell out, player passes. For example, and a lot of them are just like local players that are just kind of want to see what they can do.
yeah.
And and then of course there's a lot of other players that are trying to break out still. And I think that the scene isn't nearly developed enough to where it's impossible for somebody to just come into a tournament and win, or at least impress. If you were to look at like Brood War for the last bunch of years, it'd be basically impossible for someone to just like ladder a lot or play on like ICOP or whatever it was for Brood War and suddenly like just go to a LAN and win, right? So there's I'm sure that kind of situation happened in Brood War, and I guess it's possible it'll happen in StarCraft 2, but right now it's still a very open scene. You have new players popping up all the time, like Suppy, Fitzy here, a bunch of other guys.
Freyr did really well at DreamHack. Ukrainian player.
Yeah, he's an old Brood War guy. I think Artosis was saying though, but I guess that's besides the point. So yeah, I don't really see it happening right now, and I think Heart of the Swarm will probably boost that a little bit too, just because a lot of people get bored or they get discouraged because they're not good at certain things or whatever, and Heart of the Swarm is going to shake everything up and allow for a lot of people to suddenly become good, kind of like StarCraft 2 did with Brood War. You got like an MVP or a Nesty that wasn't doing very well in Brood War, came over and did well in StarCraft 2. I think Heart of the Swarm will have like a slightly similar effect. So I don't really see it really falling off as far as professional interest for players, but I don't know. I'm not a professional player.
Yeah. Julia, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think when Heart of the Swarm comes live, it has nowhere to go but up. Like everyone who plays the game, whether they're professional or not, are going to want to really see what all the new units and everything has brought to the game. And I think definitely in the beginning, all the pro games, everything is going to be so interesting to watch because all these new units and the gameplay is going to be all these new dynamics, with what we're used to and how is it going to change the game. And I think it's definitely going to be a lot more popular in the beginning, and then it'll just be a matter of, whether everything stays like up to the caliber or even further than it has so far, whether people, maintain the, excitement and utter devotion to playing as much and just maintaining those numbers. But it'll definitely be more popular right in the beginning when it comes out again. Yeah. I'm excited for it.
I am too. I'm also excited to see what kind of changes they're going to make to Battle.net, maybe having some stream-embedded windows when you log into the game to see the actual tournaments, like what Riot Games has been doing, which really increases the viewership of the tournaments for those games. Now, having the news thing in there for StarCraft 2 is great, but I think that they could do more with it, and a lot of people agree as well. But Blizzard's presence in Anaheim was fantastic. Yeah. Them complimenting me specifically, like in meetings and stuff, saying, the event was great, especially Clutch. I'm like, yeah, that's so cool. But I feel that they were very, very impressed with that tournament, and the World Championship Series, as I have mentioned before, is a step in the right direction from Blizzard, and I'm happy they're being more involved with esports. And also, the Caspa transition is just fantastic as well. So a lot of good things are happening. But for yourself, Julia, what are your goals as a player, and is there a time limit to those goals?
Well, every time I'm in an interview, the question is, where do you see yourself in the future? And I keep saying Masters, and I still haven't hit it, unfortunately. And I do beat a lot of Masters players on ladder, but it's just that I don't maintain enough points season to season to actually get promoted, or maybe just Battle.net has it out for me. But I would love to hit Masters sooner than later, and hopefully, like I said before, maybe expanding out a little bit and starting, like, maybe doing some interviews or like becoming like some kind of personality, like a like a Rachel or an Anna. I mean, they're like the idols, you know, that you're supposed to aspire to be, and that would be really awesome. Maybe a little a lot to hope for at this point, but there isn't really a time limit. Before I was thinking, you know, by the end of the summer, I was going to take off the winter semester. So basically, January to August, I wasn't going to be going to school, and I was really just going to focus on esports full time. But then had some issues in life, and I actually ended up having to register for the summer semester. So now that I'm taking school now, but I'm not going full time. So like I'm still totally available to do tournaments, to go. I'm even working with my professor this semester to, like I missed a class for Anaheim, and I might miss a class for Raleigh as well. But I don't know. I'm just willing to make everything work, and I'm really not, you know, closing my eyes to anything. Any opportunity that presents itself, I'm going to try and, you know, make the best of it that I can. And
How much
yeah,
school do you have left?
I should really only have 2 courses remaining, but not all the courses that I want to take are offered in the right semesters. So
I know what that's like.
yeah. So not very much, though. I'm almost done.
Good. Finish.
Yeah.
You're so close. There was a moment where I thought I could drop out and do this full time if the opportunity came. But I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I finished because now it's over finally.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you. You'll get there. You'll get there. It'll be worth it.
Thank you.
Wiggins, he graduated some time ago, and
Last semester.
nice.
It's like
Hey,
a
didn't
year
you have a
now.
cavity today? I'm sorry to hear.
Oh,
Dave.
I went to the dentist and got my teeth cleaned for the first time in like 3 years because I didn't have the insurance for a long time. And it turns out I have a cavity, and I was very sad about it.
Oh, bummer,
Second
man.
Soda. You know, it's one of those, like, it doesn't bother me or anything. I would never have known alone, but, you know, they go and they poke you with knives and shit. And whatever.
Nice.
Like, oh, there's a hole in your tooth now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get to have the lovely experience of putting my iPod on as loud as I can and trying to tune out a drill for.
Well, I am not close to your level as far as gameplay, Julia, but consistency in the acting world is important, and you really have to hustle. And I've seen that from a lot of players. I've seen that from you. I've seen you present at Twitch parties, at events, and that's important because you're constantly in people's minds and you're in front of them. And it's not going to happen overnight, but down the line, that opens more opportunities. And I have had that ingrained in me from the acting school and all sorts of different, workshops and stuff of it really is a hustle. But if you're there and you're willing to do the work, sometimes, for free, that can open some doors. And it's opened doors for me. I've being a cameraman, and Wiggins started as a ref, and now,
Still stuck as a ref.
but you're the best ref. I mean, players mention you by name, in their blogs, saying that you're really good, and we're,
That's nice.
we've been doing this show for almost a year now, man, and it's that consistency part, and keep doing good work and doing your best, and doors will open. I know it's a bit of a little pep talk there, but I believe in that. That's, I don't make any money off this show, but I do it because I love it, and one day, hopefully it'll open some more doors, and it looks great on a resume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of those doors one of those doors actually just did open for me, so I have a huge announcement, press release-wise. It'll happen within the week, so guys, stay tuned for that. Very exciting stuff. But we're going to move into questions from the chat, and then after the questions, Wiggins going to talk about the decision by MLG in the World Championship Series, and then we'll close it out. So the first question is from Citron15. On Reddit, people were mentioning how North American pro gamers' development is decreasing due to Koreans taking over foreign tournaments. How do you think North American potential pro gamers become a pro gamer, other than having a North America only tournament?
That's part of the reason I went on that little mini rant about the local scene, by the way, because I
Yeah.
think that's a huge part of how it should be. As far as right now, it's like you have to kind of already be a pro to be a pro. Like you have to basically play like a pro before you can get the opportunity to even be seen as one, right? And that's it. I don't feel like that's not really the way it should be working, right? There should be a way to grow talent, but how do you become one right now? Win a bunch of playhems, do really well at an MLG?
Tournament results. That's a big thing.
Like you really have to put up the results, right?
Yeah.
The results for sure. I think also maybe just from like my own experience, because I'm not necessarily the best player out there, but something that has helped me gain a lot of exposure, I guess, is playing with better known players. Like when I first streamed and I was playing some games with Destiny, that helped me move forward a lot. If in case you're somebody who plays often in playhems, or anybody who streams and is popular, playing a couple games with them, I don't know if this is like the most correct thing to do, but especially if you're friends, it's not like you're trying to use anybody, but it really helps give you like the first step where you start to build your own fan base and you start streaming. And then, like I said before too, it's like building your own niche. Why do people want to watch you, and what I know you're saying like pro gamer and skill level, and that definitely matters. But I think also just becoming somebody that people recognize too also ties into becoming professional, right?
Yeah. Well, the
sure.
line between amateur and professional, I think, is time. How much time do you devote playing, and do you revolve, or do you set your life goals currently to revolve around your play, you playing the game? If so, you're a professional. Like that's what you do for most of your time. If you're a professional golfer, you golf most of the time. In esports, the establishment is a little bit different because it's still growing, and we don't like. Korea is different, right? I mean, the amateur and pro scene is a little bit different compared to the rest of the world, but the establishment is not as big as the 100 years we've had of traditional sports, right? So I consider Julia a professional gamer because she's on a team, she attends events, she competes for money, and she devotes a lot of her time to it. I don't consider myself a professional gamer because I don't devote all my time to it. I mainly play for fun and for entertainment to stream, but I don't compete in tournaments. So that's how I define it. People may define it differently, but that's my definition of being a pro gamer. Go ahead.
Completely off topic.
Yeah.
I accidentally just banned somebody from chat that took the time to write out like 10 really well thought through Citron, like 10 really well thought through questions, and I was trying to copy and paste them, and I accidentally banned him or timed him out. Okay, how do I unban?
I don't think you can unban. I think just the time has to run out.
No, you can just type /unban and then type in his name. Space.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Julia.
Bros.
Sorry about that. Okay, next question. Iceberg 85. What do you think is the most important thing for a player to do to improve if they are in lower leagues? Julia, I'll have you answer that question.
I think I guess it depends how low. I mean, but really focusing on, some of the main like fundamental things that you need to know in the game is like, pro production and, the buildings and just builds. I think something that's really important too is just having a plan for each game, and knowing that if you're Protoss and you get matched up against the Zerg, what are your first, 10 steps that you do, and really practice those out so that you have an idea. Because if you're just making things and you're getting supply blocked and you don't have any idea really what you're doing, then you're going to feel so lost the whole time, and you're just going to get really demotivated to play. So I think that's really important, actually. Sorry.
Citron 15, next question. I know that Complexity have academies and stuff, but do you think teams should have scouts like in sports where they go around scouting for players with potential?
I think that's a big part of just management of a pro team.
Yeah.
Right now, I think
EG does that. They win a dream hack, get on EG with Thorzane, but they look at talent. when the Koreans were trying to join the foreign teams, those teams were looking at potential people. Tasia to Team Liquid, Ganji to Complexity.
I don't know if you need specific scouts, really. I mean, like, if you just follow the scene at all, you can see who's performing.
Yeah.
You know who has a team or who doesn't.
Because everything's pretty much streamed anyways, the major events.
Yeah, I guess you just need to rely on your manager or whoever's in charge of player acquisitions to be able to recognize what's going to be an actual good investment for your team. And sort of by process of elimination, most our teams right now are very good at that. So I don't know if there's any real place for an actual like scout, because the way things work right now, if somebody just starts doing well, they're going to get picked up. It's very rare to have somebody that's worth it that's teamless.
Yeah. Sidearm asks, what caused you, Julia, to pick Protoss for StarCraft 2?
I really wish I had an interesting answer for that, because I get that question a lot. But even when I went, so in Canada we have EB Games, where you guys have GameStop in the US. And I went to EB Games and I bought StarCraft 2, and they were like, do you want the Protoss, Zerg, or Terran poster? And I didn't even know what race I would play at that point. I was like, I don't know, which one do you think I would like the best? And he gave me the Zerg one because it's got the infested Kerrigan on it. And I don't know, and I got home, and I never really expected to play, somewhat seriously or professionally in any way. It's just because we've got this huge community in Vancouver, and I started to meet people who played professionally, like Optic Zero, if you recognize that name. He was on FXO. And I just started to watch gameplay of higher level players, and I started to really be motivated to, like, you don't know how much you don't know about StarCraft until you start learning about StarCraft, right? Like, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And the more interesting it is as you learn, I think. And I don't know, just while I started playing, and I would practice, 1v1 against my friend from work, and I just felt most comfortable with Protoss. And then once I got used to sentries, anytime I didn't have sentries, I was like, oh my god, my ramp, where's my force field? And it just felt comfortable.
Cool.
And of course, they're the pretty aliens, right? That's what I'm supposed to say.
You played Brood War, correct? You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, and I think I like Dragoons the best too, so that might have helped me pick Protoss.
I played Protoss and Brood War for the most part. When I heard that it was going to be Wings of Liberty Terran for StarCraft 2, I switched to Terran and Brood War because I thought, well, I know which race is going to be the most polished when the game comes out. Another question, Sidearm. I'll answer this one. Where do you think the CBS partnership will go? More eyes on esports, more advertising dollars, more money. Television, do we really need to be on television? I don't know. The good thing about television means it's more eyes, but we shouldn't change esports and the broadcast schedule or the style or the heart of esports to fit to TV. It's for the internet, just like traditional sports and television grew together. Esports and internet is growing together, and that's what's going to happen. TV's cool, but internet's here now. TV is dying. Chili 13. How can you establish a minor league when there is no established major league? Major League Gaming? MLG, NASL, IPL, GSL. Also, how can you consider the GSL minor leagues when it was some really high caliber professional players? I would consider minor leagues to be more amateur who aren't really recognized. You can classify however you want, but it's going to come down to production value and viewership. Major League, IPL, NASL, and DreamHack have the most people watching, the most people attending, and the most players there. So that's how I classify that. But that to me is the difference. Well, like I said, it's not to diminish anything that GSL is doing. It's a great event, but they didn't have 437 people watching them or 4.7 million unique views. Next question, Jean Robitam. Hey, Julia, you have any plans to do other roles in esports aside playing and streaming, like casting and hosting events? You've already answered that, but what if you could have host an event or host some sort of stream? What would you like to do? Like, what's kind of your dream job outside of, or your dream capacity outside of being a player?
Oh man, going around the world would be awesome. Like going to like a DreamHack would be amazing. But I don't know, just being like really out there and with the StarCraft scene would be really what I would love. You know, like I would be lucky enough to get any of those opportunities. I can't really say, you know, one specifically, because if I started doing well in one area, hopefully I would get to go to all of them. But I guess MLGs. I mean, I've kind of like MLGs. I've grown with them, I guess, or maybe they've grown with me. I'm not sure. Since those are the ones I'm most familiar with, that would definitely be awesome to be able to, I guess, kind of give back and help promote it more too.
Called the Canadian Corner.
Canadian corner with clutch.
That's it could be a thing. I don't know. I'm not like, oh my gosh, a girl can steal my spot. But when I look at other tournaments, I think I could do that, but I'm not a girl. They want a girl to do it. But,
Yeah.
well, it's good to have somebody as a host that understands the game and not just hiring a pretty girl and say, hey, here's a microphone, good luck. You know, people are a lot smarter than that, especially in esports and on the internet.
Yeah, they're pretty brutal.
Yes, let's move on. What did you think about having the World Championship Series and MLG the same weekend? This is more focused to Julia, but Wigan, I can also have you answer.
Sure.
Do you want to go ahead? Or?
Yeah, go ahead, Julia.
Oh, okay. It was pretty crazy. I mean, you never really knew who was playing what at any point. I know, like, a lot of my players, or the players on my team, Tech 6, were going back and forth. And I think in the beginning they were having the WCS playing while the MLG people wanted to be practicing, which was kind of a pain too, because they weren't opening up the players area, which, you know, in fairness, you know, what are you supposed to do? But I know a lot of people were kind of annoyed that they didn't have, you know, the hours they normally would before MLG starting to practice and, you know, be comfortable. And of course, you know, with what they were saying about not allowing people who qualified for the WCS to compete at Raleigh, like, that's definitely something that needs to be addressed too, I think.
Okay. Wigan, thoughts?
I feel like I've said this like so many times over the last week.
Well, yeah, let's tie
15
this in.
years.
Let's tie this in. I know we talked about it last week, but let's tie this into the announcement that's happened about the WCS and MLG. First, they're not going to allow players to participate in both. Now they are with the stacked schedule. Your thoughts on that?
I think it's not a terrible idea. It's really cool that we get to run it. But like Julia said, it was very hectic. It was very confusing, and there were just a lot of issues with it that were very unfortunate. And I'm not sure
Hello?
what they could have done ahead of time. Oh,
I
Sorry,
think we got her
my
back.
internet cut out.
she's back.
That's okay.
All right.
But yeah, so it was just very confusing, very hectic, and it was sort of unfortunate that it ended up being harder on players than it should have been for that event. But I don't think it's something that we should just like get rid of, and I don't think. I'm really glad that MLG changed their mind and decided to just adjust the schedule and let players play in both, because I think that's the best. Like, I think that the solution is definitely not to just bar players from doing both, and you know they can only do one or the other. I think that we should be able to accommodate people as best as we can, so that they can play in both. And obviously, it's going to be harder to play in both than it is to play in only one or the other, just because that's reality. You're trying to do twice as much with the same amount of time. But I'm glad that they're trying their best to make it as reasonable for players as possible.
Yeah, that's important. I don't know why they made that decision. My mindset, or trying to get into the mindset of the people in League Ops, was, well, the schedule was too difficult for some players at the last event, so let's just make it even for everybody, where you can either participate in one or the other, so nobody says, well, I want to participate in both, and then other people are like, well, I don't feel like participating in both, but then I feel like I'm at a disadvantage, so they're forced to do it. I mean, I'm not exactly sure why they made that decision, but with the change and listening to the community, it was pretty fast, and say, okay, let's have a better structured schedule. I feel that's the better decision to make, and I'm glad that they did that.
Yeah, one thing about MLG that's really nice is they will make changes and they'll do everything they can, if they see a problem. And I hope people have sort of realized that over the last year and a half of seeing MLG grow and change as much as it has. And as far as like why they made the decision originally to make it so you can only do one or the other, I think it's really one of those things that it might not make sense looking at it, but we don't, you have no idea what goes on behind closed doors and why the decision might have been made one way or the other, or what pressure might have caused that. So generally, I know the people in Leo Ops are very, very intelligent people. So generally when I see a situation like that and I'm not sure why they would do that, I have to imagine that there's just something more to it than that we are able to know, publicly. So I'm glad they worked it out,
Yeah, me too. Next question. Nada announced his retirement today. Is from Citron 15. Other than the reasons he listed, like family problems, military duty, financial difficulties, when do you think a player should retire from esports? And what's the next stage for them if they didn't have an education, such as a college dropout? Well, that's kind of a loaded question because it's a case-by-case basis. But
I think the best answer I can give is as soon as you feel like it's not for you anymore, man. Like it's not something you should stick around and do if you're not enjoying it and you feel like it's not for you anymore. You have to enjoy what you're doing in life or you're going to be miserable. So do it as long as you enjoy it and then try to move on. And as far as if you don't have an education, go get one. Go get one if you can afford it, Yeah. It's never too late to go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Okay. Next question here. Julie, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm so sorry. I'm having the worst problems with my camera.
That's okay. That's all right. We'll be wrapping up here in a second.
And Josh, for the record, there's a lot of questions. So I don't know if you want to pick and choose or whatever.
That's what I'm trying to do, right? I'm trying to go over ones we've already covered. Citron again. Yes, it's a very big deal that the Swedish television channel broadcasted DreamHack. I think it's great. Next step for esports after television broadcasts. I don't
know.
It's internet, man. Like internet's here now. It's the future. It's trumping television. So the next step after that, I don't know, 4D, 3D. I think it'd be really cool. I don't know if you guys have AMC Theaters or Regal Cinema, but they have something called Fathom Events where you can watch live stage performers, like performances from the Metropolitan Opera and from concerts and like special screenings of films. I think it'd be really cool if these theaters started to do esports showcases, like on Sunday night for a whole day. You sit in a theater and it's streamed live and you watch it. I think that'd be really cool. It's kind of a little bit different than a bar craft, but it has huge seating capacity. I think that's something that Fathom Events could do, especially as esports continues to rise.
Yeah, and I think the next step isn't anything with technology or TV or anything like that. I really think it is growing a local scene. I think, bar crafts are a great example. Like, look how popular they are and how successful so many of them have been because it's locally based, right? You get together with people around you and enjoy something together. Take bar crafts and make them lands. Keep it moving. Keep more and more local growth. That's how things will work. That's like how StarCraft will go from being an esport to like a legitimate. Well, I won't say legitimate because I think it's a legitimate.
Hey man, if you take home $25,000 for winning something, that's legitimate.
Yeah, it'll be something that's I guess more I hate to use the term mainstream, but something that's more there'll be more public awareness. Let's say that. Yeah. Take an MLG and some random player gets sent there and like how do you talk to somebody around where you live about that, right? You're like, oh, it's a cool player, and like they have no idea who that is. But if you're like, oh, there's this cool player from down the street or a couple blocks away and he's competing for like $20,000, then people get interested, people that have never even heard of it before. So I really think that local growth is where esports and StarCraft need to go.
The local scene. It's getting bigger. Barcrafts are cool, man. And when you create that kind of networking community together, like, hey, why don't we just like run our own tournament one time, guys? Like, dude, that'd be awesome. You know, and that's what happens. All right, so if that's going to do it for questions, I appreciate everybody's participation in chat. And we're going to wrap up here. But before we do, I want to express my appreciation for Nada's career. It's sad to see him go and have to retire. I'll always remember the "I am Nada" moment when he beat Puma at MLG. I wish him all the best. Also, one of the community leaders for the fighting game community from Capcom. He's also leaving Capcom, which was a bummer to see because the fighting game community is trying to grow with MLG in the esports scene. But yeah, it was kind of sad to see that. But esports goes on, and hopefully Nada can find something in his life that will give him as much happiness and passion that esports did, because we saw that in his play, and we saw that in his performance, and we saw that as a player emotionally in his games. So with that being said, for shout-outs and closing thoughts, Julia, we'll have you go first.
Okay, well, I'm first of all so sorry that my camera is so terrible. Everybody, and to you guys, this has been painful. But thank you so much for having me on your show. It has been really awesome and really eye-opening, actually. I really enjoyed listening to both of you guys' opinions on everything that you've said. And I guess shout out to my team and my sponsors and my friends and just everybody who's helped me succeed in esports, and all my fans and everybody who is in this chat right now watching this stream because I told you to. Good on you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And where can people follow you on Twitter?
Oh, well, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch at AlugeSC.
All right. You got it's written on the overlay, guys, right under her non-working webcam. Wigan is frozen as well, so I think it means we got to close the show. But Wigan, shout-outs, my friend.
Shout-out to all the people that we regularly see in chat, like Wawa, Daigo. Shout-out to Citron for being a good sport and asking a load of questions, even if we didn't get all to them, and not being mad at me for banning him on accident.
And also see Chili13. A lot of good questions out there. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, there were great questions this time. And shout out just everybody in chat in general for watching this, even though State of the Game was going on at the same time.
Found out today that JP scheduled this night. It's like, oh, JP, what are you doing?
Pretty BM, JP. Come on, man. But
it's all right. There's VODs.
So yeah, thanks again for having me, buddy. And you can follow me on Twitter at DBWigan. And I always keep saying my stream, but I haven't been streaming lately, so I won't plug it this time. But yeah, follow me on Twitter at DBWigan, and if you're ever interested in me streaming, I'll announce it on there when I'm doing it.
All right, well, it's been a pleasure to have you both on the show. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Clutch08. Guess what? Smite beta code inbound, chat. First one to claim it gets it. I want to celebrate over 3,000 followers on Twitter now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, Send some of them my way, man. I'm at like 230 right now.
I know. They're coming, man. Trying to get more and more. I'd love to host NASL. I'd love to host DreamHack. So tweet those guys. Tell them that I am a private contractor, so I could host for them. I speak Spanish.
Josh, you got to learn that there's a delay to the chat, man. You got to, this might be a key.
Hey, man, when they see a bunch of numbers, they're like, what is this?
If they're smart enough, they got it first, man.
Yeah, and I also said it on Twitter that I'd be giving out towards the end of the show. So, anyways, I want to thank everybody that made MLG Anaheim so amazing and all the nice compliments I've been getting. I was on the losers bracket right before this. You guys can check out that VOD as well. They're on Twitch. VVV Gaming does that. And, of course, you can catch the VODs on here. If you missed anything, there will be posts on YouTube as well. Tell your friends. This really is a great show. And I'm not saying that because I'm the host, but I have some great guests on here that I think give some really good insight to esports and to gaming in general. I cover a lot of things from betas to live gameplay to esports. So tell your friends, trying to get more viewers watching this. I think it's a great show. Wigan will agree. And I think Julia, after being here, will agree. The announcement will happen this week, guys.
You're just pre-announcing.
Yeah, announcement. I can tell you that I signed with an agent. And it's a
Ooh.
Oh, I
pretty
know exactly what you're talking about.
it's a pretty big deal. So that will be announced officially here pretty soon. So stay tuned for that. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to sign off. We will see you next week. Same time, same place. This has been Shifting Gears. Have a great night. Good luck, have fun, and good game. See you next time.